Hey there, YouTube, Busy Boy Lipid out here with another reaction video. Today we got Veritasium on these questions. Smarter people do worse. Let's get right into it, shall we? Hit it.
There is this research paper that has been on my mind for years. It shows that there is a particular type of problem where the smarter you are, the more likely you are to get it wrong. So I asked my American friend Wiley to go out on the street and ask people the questions from the study to see if we could replicate its findings.
Okay.
The first question in the paper is about a fictitious study on skin cream. So in this made-up study, people with skin rashes are assigned to either the experimental group, where they use a new cream for 2 weeks, or the control group, where they use no cream for that same period. And at the end, they count up how many rashes improved and how many got worse in each treatment group. The results are summarized in this table.
Okay.
So the question study participants were asked was,
did the skin cream make the rash better, or did it make it worse?
The question is a little tricky because it requires proportional reasoning.
I think better.
Better? So what are you looking at, just real quick?
I'll be honest, I'm just looking at how big the numbers are.
If you just look for
okay, the logic here is, let's say you gave them cream, rash improved, rash worsened. Let's say you didn't give them cream, rash improved, rash worsened. You can look at the proportions. Yeah, that makes sense. If I look at 107 to this, like say double the number of people improved, but at the same time, you got 3 times, is that 3 times the number of problems, I think? Huh. You could do it the other way around as well. I think you can also do it like this, I think. That's 3 times better. Close to 4, 5 times 10. Yeah, so 5 times. Okay, yeah, you can make the argument that if they had not taken the cream, they'd be better off. Yeah, because just because the number here is bigger, I think you have less number of people having rashes worsened. So you could kind of deduce they shouldn't be taking it. Yeah, okay.
the biggest number, well, that is the group who used the skin cream and the rash improved.
So this number is bigger than this number?
Technically, well, the logic is, actually, wait, this is going to be super cool if I can pull this off in the video. Hold on. Don't think I've ever done this, but I'm going to give it a shot. Hold on. Wait a minute. I've seen people do this on YouTube, so I get to actually finally try this. Hold on. This is actually kind of super sick. So they kind of gave the numbers here, basically. It's like, all right, let's say this. So let's say they took the cream, and let's say they didn't take the cream right here, right? So it's 223, 75. This is a positive effect, this is a negative effect. Let's say they got 107 here, and let's say that's 21. Now, fair enough, you can make the comparison between these three. I think that's about 3 times, and let's say this is 2x. So already there's 3 times the problems here coming in because if they had just taken the cream. But at the same time, this is probably like what? 3 times? And this is probably what? 5. So regardless how you say it, this number is still high, much higher than this number. So you can make the argument that taking the cream is the wrong choice and not taking the cream is the right choice. This is the reasoning I got for this. And this could be super cool if I can put this in the video. I'm still, this is nice. This is nice. I'm actually super curious to see how this works. All right, let's go.
Well, that is the group who used the skin cream and the rash improved.
So this number is bigger than this number? Yeah.
So you might conclude that the cream worked. It makes rashes better. That is the intuitive answer. But if you look more carefully at the data and use proportional reasoning, you realize that in the experimental cream group, about 3 times as many people got better as got worse. But in the control group, around 5 times as many people got better. So
that's the ratio they're going for.
Worse.
Okay, not the upper one.
So using no cream, your rash was significantly more likely to improve. In fact, it's a fair conclusion to say that the cream, on average, made rashes worse. The lead author on this study was Dan Kahan.
I'm studying the science of science communication.
He and colleagues recruited a nationally diverse sample of 1,111 Americans to participate. But before answering the question on skin cream, each participant was asked a series of questions to assess their numeracy.
A numeracy, it's not so much...
Oh, I get it, because it's numeral literacy, numeracy.
The capacity to use complicated mathematics, but really to reason well about quantitative information.
Like intuition, okay.
Numeracy scores for the entire sample
were... not intuition. I think more of like having intuition as a side guess, but also kind of looking at the numbers to come to a conclusion. Okay, that's fine.
Roughly normally distributed. Now, if you group together all the participants with a certain numeracy score, say group all the zeros together, all the ones together, all the twos, and so on, well, what fraction of each group do you think got the skin cream question right?
Higher literacy.
Well,
higher numeracy.
the results are exactly what you'd expect.
Oh, this is math.
It's math.
In a fifth of the people, which is a smaller number,
Uh-huh.
the rash worsened, so the skin cream didn't help.
So it didn't make it better.
I feel like the cream, if anything, made it worse.
The higher the numeracy score, the greater the fraction
Right.
of participants who got
Logically,
the answer
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I don't think the numbers mean anything to me. Because
Okay.
I think
That's a
I
perfectly fine
think I
answer.
would need to know what's the rash and what's the cream you're giving me.
Those with better numeracy skills managed to avoid the intuitively correct answer.
What are the, proportions?
We've had nobody get into the numbers like this. This is great. Excellent. You got that right.
Okay.
And correctly
And a
determine
completely different side note.
Into the numbers like this. This is great. Excellent.
Oh man, you got a fire ash shirt. I don't know where you got that shirt from. That's nice. That's super clean shirt.
You got that right.
Okay.
and correctly determine that the cream actually made rashes worse, which is no big surprise. But this version of the skin cream question was only shown to some of the participants. Another subset saw the same exact table, except the column headings were reversed.
Wait a minute. So that means if you hold on. So that means it's the other way around. So if I do this and do this, so whoever took the cream had worse results, but they had improved, versus people who didn't take the cream. Right.
So in this case, the skin cream did make the rashes better.
Huh, right. Okay, so even if it's a 23, the ratio would still say that many people improved versus this. Okay, yeah, okay. See, even with that, that higher proportionality here from before now adds up compared to this. So it would actually be in your benefit to take the cream this time and not take the... Okay, fair enough, okay. Well, that's understood. Why does it matter, though?
So how did the different numeracy groups do with this version? Well, again, the highest numeracy groups were the most likely to get the correct answer. But below a numeracy score of 5, the results were pretty flat.
Oh, okay. Oh, I understand. Okay, so just because the problem shifted, now that the answer is the option with the higher number, the intuitive guess people might pull in, which is 223, is the correct answer this time, so they have a higher numeracy. Okay, well, fine. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, sure.
That could be because even without any numerical reasoning, most people
Right.
might expect a skin cream to improve a rash, which just happens to be the right answer in this case.
Fine.
But the true purpose of the study was not to find out how numeracy affects our ability to reason accurately with data. No, it was to figure out if something else affects our reasoning ability, specifically politics. If you look at the skin cream data again, but separate the participants by their self-reported political affiliations, so liberal Democrats versus conservative Republicans, there's basically no difference between the groups. All follow the same pattern irrespective of party,
Okay.
which makes sense because a study on skin cream is about as apolitical as it gets. But what the researchers did with the other half of the participants was the opposite. Instead of skin cream, they presented a fictitious study on gun control.
Oh, okay. I kind of understand where he's going with this. Oh shit. Okay. Hold on. Oh, that is interesting. Okay. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. I'm gonna call it the pew pew because I don't know if YouTube, please. No. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Put pew pew as well. And we will strike out the pew pew because gun. Right. Let's say crime increased, crime decreased. And let's say 223, take the same numbers again. Same thing as before, but now the reasoning is, okay, so in this case, okay, it's the same thing as before. I bet. But I'm trying to understand where the trick is. It's like, well, if you look at just the number, quite frankly, yeah, if I say 3 times to x here and say 5 times to x here still, I'm trying to think, okay, I'm trying to see where the video is going with this. Hold on. Okay.
In case you don't know, Democrats generally believe that gun control reduces crime, whereas Republicans believe it increases crime because it takes guns out of the hands of good guys who could prevent or deter crime. So, in their made-up study, cities were divided into two groups. Those that had recently enacted legislation making it illegal to carry a concealed handgun, and similar cities that had no such legislation. Over the following year, crime rates were monitored to see where crime increased and where it decreased, and the results are summarized in the table.
Of course.
Again, no surprise, it's exactly the same as the skin cream example. Of course, there were two variations, one where gun control decreased crime, and one where it increased crime.
Right. Huh. Okay, it could be that just because the context of it has changed. I think, yeah, of course, you're changing it from a skin cream, which has no political affiliation, to suddenly having it politically affiliated. So now it no longer is a question of whether the data you're presenting alone is what you're going to use to make your decision. Now you're going to start taking into other things into account, like political affiliation. Is the data right? And there's so many more like critical questions that are going to be asked with this. But if you look at it purely from like a pure rational point of view, and you say, okay, this is fictitious data, based on the data, this is how you should be acting, which is identical to a skin cream problem, you should have the charts of people who respond be identical. But knowing how people take political affiliations and kind of hold it closer to like their personal identity, I think that's where they're going for with the video, which is I think the deviation you're going to get is basically people looking at the data. They might think they've considered the data, but they're going to vote or they're going to pick based on their political affiliations, based on the actual, instead of actually considering the data being presented to them, which will cause a mismatch in the data you get now versus what you did before, which is a purely rational exercise. But it comes to the same point, people aren't rational. Even if we like to think we're rational, we are irrational because humans, people, it is what it is. But I think that's the best bet I got.
Now, if you look at the results by political leaning, they paint a very different picture.
It's kind of obvious. If you have guns in a city, people are going to start shooting people. And you know, if you,
right. You're starting to put a face to the data. You're going to try putting a reasoning to the data, and hence that reasoning is going to lead you. Like you have to understand. I think if they made the decision with just the data alone, it's fine. But I think people, when they realize that the decision that they make eventually is influencing their lives and their freedoms and their rights, they're going to look at that data differently, which I think is the interpretation of the data being present in front of them. Because now it's no longer an apolitical study. That now it becomes a political study, which then causes a mismatch in the data.
you don't have guns and you outlaw them,
or the decisions
cities
they
are
make.
obviously going to have less crime in them. But the thing is like, you can't just take people's guns away and say that they're illegal, you know? Like that's just, it's kind of like drugs.
Right, and here's the thing. Right, because now the choice is no longer, oh, by the way, this legal and this illegal. Because even if you look at the numbers as raw data, which is fictitious numbers, understood, it then begs the question of political affiliation of, do I want to keep the pew-pew here or do I want to ban the pew-pew? And when it comes as a question like that, you already know where people are going to make the decision not on the data, but on the political affiliation associated with the choice, regardless of data or the data choice. So that's probably what's going to happen.
So wait, but these numbers,
Okay.
how did you just come to that conclusion?
When Republicans are shown the table where the correct answer is gun control laws increase crime, then the accuracy improves with increasing numeracy, just as before. But for the Republicans who are shown the table where gun control decreases crime, Well, numeracy skills no longer affect accuracy. Those with a numeracy score of 7 or 8 are barely more likely to answer correctly than those with a score of 0 or 1.
So where the crime improved, like there can be crimes that were prevented because the guns were legal, and the crimes that were worsened, that could have been other crimes.
Right, what I hear is basically, and it's not taking shots at people, it's not trying to say it's right or wrong, because quite frankly, it's opinions at the end of the day. It's still the majority that has to make the call. Because, quite frankly, yeah, if you try justifying the reasoning as to why the data comes out a certain kind of way, you'd still try to figure out an irrational justification that fits in line with your worldview. Even if you don't really consider the fact that, hey, you're not opening your mind to the possibility that maybe that worldview needs to shift based on the actual data being received. It is what it is, but that's my point.
Like not related to guns, you know?
Right.
And the same is true in reverse for Democrats. The more numerate people in this sample have no problem recognizing the correct answer when it shows that gun control reduced crime.
Right.
But if the data showed that gun control increased crime, then all of a sudden, numeracy didn't help. Remember,
because it goes against not only worldview, it goes against your political stance, which also goes against, which I think is the political identity. What I mean by that is, I think, quite frankly, I think it's more like really obvious with Americans, where it's because you're very much repping the color of like Democrats and Republicans. But the thing is, when you try to solve a problem, it isn't really a tribal mindset that helps. It really is a mindset that looks at the data that's being presented. And sure, you can question the data. I understand that. But if you do have the best available set of resources and sources projecting a certain data set, at the end of the day, you're going to have to make a call based on the data rather than your political affiliation telling you to move a certain kind of way. Which, I get it, it's an ideal stance, but in reality, it's not the case. People still vote for who they want to vote for, regardless of whether the data or the policies fit with their, with their life. It is what it is. That's like such a common truth. It's not like mind-blowing someone says it out loud. It's just, that's probably the reason why there's a discrepancy in the data in the first place, of why people move a certain kind of way. Because when you present a choice or a set of circumstances that goes against someone's worldview, they either have to accept and amend their worldview to align with the data being presented, or basically they're going to have to sit down and basically say, hey, I don't think the data is right, I think my worldview is correct, and hence I'm going to disregard what you told me. And what most people, rational or irrational, don't accept is, generally speaking, most people kind of go in option number 2. They don't even know they're disregarding the data and just sticking with their political affiliation. They're basically just not willing to, open their mind and, see what the other side has to say, which is such a human thing to do. I'm not saying that's right, or I'm not saying that's wrong. The point I'm trying to make, I think, here is, the more you're aligned to your expectations of how the world should work, you kind of start enforcing that view of the world on your actions unconsciously or subconsciously. And that is what's being reflected in the data here. That's it.
This is the exact same data and question as the skin cream example. The only difference is now that data is presented in a political context. And the biggest difference in performance is among the most numerate people. They're scoring a lot worse than they should have.
The low numeracy people are about 25 percentage points less likely to get the right answer if that answer is threatening to their ideology than if it's consistent with their ideology. The people who are high in numeracy, on the other hand, 45 percentage points less likely to get the right answer.
I think I understand why.
See, on the other hand, 45 percentage points less likely.
I think I understand why. Wait. Yeah, he's right. Of course he's right. Yeah, I wouldn't disregard the study. I think it's more of an understanding on human nature as it is anything else. But he's right. If you take the overall graph and you take the low numeracy people going like really low on a scale that's going worse and worse, and you have high numeracy people doing this, I think what's probably happening here is, with low numeracy, I think people are more open to the fact that, hey, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the block. I don't think I'm the most intelligent. I don't think I'm working with all the information that's available to me. So if there is new information being presented, I have to consider the fact and trust that the information being presented is more likely to the real world scenario. And they are hence more likely to kind of change their worldview, because you're humble enough to kind of say, hey, I think yeah, there's not much ego in the way over there. Now versus the high numeracy group, this group right here is, oh, you educated, oh, you got this nice position, you working in this company, you an employee, you working full time. And suddenly you come up with that situation of, I see this information being projected to me, those bastards are lying, they're cheating, they're conniving, I don't think they're right, and hence, for the most part, I'm not going to listen to you. And I think it comes from a position of either ego or it's a position of just not being able to accept that your perspective and your perception is wrong. And that, I think, I've seen in so many people, including myself. And I can understand where that comes from, like an evolutionary point of view, because sometimes sticking with your gut and sticking with your instinct has generally helped humanity a lot more than just, working it out just for the numbers. But in this case, when sorting like very specific problems to society, this is something people need to know about. And I think that's a very difficult thing to get people to, discuss and work on, unless people are willing to hear the other side. If you're not willing to hear what the other side has to say, and you become too polarized, you become paralyzed by the fact that no one can make a move, and you start becoming more hostile to the other group. Where in theory, both of you are living on the same plot of land, the same country. You should be working together to solve common goals. I think that's
to get the right answer.
That's what it is.
Rather than using their mathematical ability to come to the correct conclusion, they somehow selectively apply it to justify the conclusion they already believed beforehand.
Illegal guns last
Illegal crime.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that.
That as numeracy increases, people are more divided about the efficacy or the risks of gun control regulation. The same thing with fracking. And same thing with global warming. We see the polarization conditional on numeracy. But we also see this same effect when we measure people's reasoning proficiency in other ways. The people who are high in science literacy, more polarized than the people who are low. The people who are high in actively open-minded thinking, you see more polarization, not less, as they become more proficient in this kind of thinking.
Based on this data, of course, I'd want to look into it and look at all the sources.
Yeah, and of course someone's going to come in and justify the data. That's obvious. Everyone is. I was going to go, well, where'd you get your data from? There's always going to be someone who does that. But either way, what I do want to suggest is I think the professor who actually came up with this paper, shout out, because I think this is such a nice call into, because I don't think it's even a political paper as much as I think it's a human psychology paper, because this really delves deeper into the reasoning as to why we do certain things. So fair enough.
There are sources from sources really because people are always citing each other.
So
but
this is the numbers are actually not real whatsoever.
It looks, but if I were to look at this pragmatically, I would just say that the playing field seems pretty even here.
Pretty even?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Now, everyone wants to believe that they are rational, that they could change their beliefs in light of the evidence.
If you encountered evidence on a political issue that you were like, this is good evidence, I've done my research, but it contradicted your political belief on that issue, how would you react to that?
I considered myself to be a little bit open-minded in that aspect.
At least be open to learning.
The truth probably is it's something we like to say to ourselves because we think we're open and rational. But of course, unless it becomes a problem that really does affect you directly, in which case that falls apart very quickly. And I think as much as people like to believe we're being rational, 90+% of the time we are irrational beings. There is no question of it in my mind, because that's who we are. That's human nature. It's not even as a joke. That's just well understood. And I think going through life being irrational is a hell of a lot more fun than being rational, in my opinion, because it's life. You get one chance, one shot at this. But that being said, when you have to solve major problems that requires leadership and requires directness, you kind of need to be very well versed with the data being present in front of you. And you need to have at least minimum trust in government institutions to kind of get things moving. Because if you have no trust and people are hostile to each other, you paralyze a system that can no longer function properly. That's just what's happening.
Yeah.
If it's on paper and that's the way it is, I would have to go with that.
I'm gonna have to deal with it. I can't be like, well, I feel like it's different.
All I see here are people who will continue to hold partisan beliefs regardless of the evidence, all the while deluding themselves into thinking they came to these beliefs via an independent, sober consideration of the facts. The truth is that mostly we believe what we believe to fit in with our tribe.
Yeah.
And that, in the most important way, is highly rational.
Right. Yeah, because from a survival point of view, right?
Because humans are very social creatures, and for most of our evolution, we've depended on each other for survival. Being ostracized from the group is almost as bad as walking off a cliff. If we question the status quo by rejecting what those around us accept as true, we jeopardize our place in society.
Man, I've learned that people are not as dissimilar as we think, that there is so many similarities between sides that we think share nothing in common.
I attended Zoom meetings in the opposite party, and it was kind of scary because they sounded just like my side.
It makes you think about what we could get done if we didn't have that burden. And I think it would be a pretty different world and pretty extraordinary if we managed to figure that out.
So what do we do about this? Well, I don't think there is an easy solution, but Kahan has identified a few angles that might work. One is avoiding partisan rhetoric. Rather than talk about gun control or climate change, avoid the loaded terms and instead focus on specific local policies. No buzzwords that could trigger anyone into tribal thinking.
I do agree with that, but I think the obvious problem that's going to come up is when you try doing that with a large enough scale of a problem, people are going to start looking at you and basically saying, oh, but you're trying to, remove my freedom by trying to hide this behind a set of words when you're trying to mean something else. Like, you're trying to sideswipe what the actual problem is. It's probably one of the problems that's going to come up from that, most likely.
No villainizing the other side, just constructive solutions that make sense given the data.
Sure.
One example comes from Southeast Florida, where a bipartisan group of lawmakers have joined together to take action on sea level rise. The plans don't debate whether climate change is man-made or not, they just deal with existing challenges faced by residents. The other thing is to foster a curious mindset.
Maybe the science-curious people, they're more willing to examine all the evidence, including information.
Now, before even going to that, I think the problem with the flood situation again is, well, yeah, but you'd still be treating you'd be treating the symptom. You wouldn't be treating the problem of climate change, which is the bigger issue, which still eludes it.
Residents. The other thing is to foster a curious
That's
mindset.
fair.
Maybe the science-curious people, they're more willing to examine all the evidence, including information that's inconsistent with their political ideology.
With increasing science comprehension, usually comes increasing polarization on political topics. But with increasing science curiosity, this same increase in polarization is not observed. That is a start. I am not going to claim to have the solution. Problems of this sort are likely as old as the human species itself. They are just much more obvious now that everyone can post, tweet, comment, and basically shout loudly into this nearly infinite digital
which is a good thing.
The only thing I hope to do is bring some awareness. The beliefs of most people are not formed by a careful consideration of the data. That includes me, and it probably includes you. Acknowledging this is an important first step.
100%. I think, looking at the whole video, I think it's a well done video. I got no complaints. Shout out to Veritasium. This is a solid video. I think the only point I would probably make an argument for is, look, at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons why those political affiliations or the reasons why we make certain decisions as we do is, quite frankly, people are tired. Like, when you go to work, you come back, like, by the end of the day, you're fucking exhausted. Like, you don't really have time to go and say, oh my God, now that I'm back from work, let me go and sit down what these political agendas are. And then you start going through their political policies. No. What's more than likely happening is a lot of people in today's world, thought is expensive. Thinking is expensive because thinking requires time and energy, which people don't really have. And, they're working longer hours trying to survive and, putting food on the table for families. So it's like, I think the best most people have done is just sit down, kind of like realize, okay, well, I might not be able to look individually into every issue. I'm going to have to bet that certain people who are looking out for me have looked into the issue, and hence I can follow what they say. And generally, if I follow what they say, things will be all right. And this goes on for a long enough period of time where everyone is doing that to someone else that they know and they think is out for their best interest. And unfortunately, in life, the harshest lesson is the only one who's out for your best self-interest is yourself. Not even your parents. It's like, as much a harsh truth as that is, that's probably the case. And of course, you can trust your parents more than others, but that's it's one of those factors in life where it's like, well, don't kind of go into the assumption that everything your parents are going to do for you or support you with is for your best self-interest. Yeah, of course, because people are selfish. People can be greedy. That's par for the course, right? So looking at the video, is there anything that I'd probably add on top of this? No, I think Veritasium kind of covered it well. And I think this talks to not just as like a problem of like a political spectrum problem. This is more of an issue with how people deal with the information that's being provided to them and how certain actions are being made. Because quite frankly, it's how you say democracy is a reflection of the people that, are, who are part of the system, but it's also a reflection of how people come together to get certain things solved or to get major problems solved. And just because it looks like people are divided doesn't mean that at the end of the day, political parties, elections, or anything else or not, you're still going to go to your job the next day with rubbing shoulder to shoulder with people who are voting on the other side. You're trying to solve the same problem. It's just that some people might hold different beliefs. And the thing about democracy is, as I think the French said it best, is like, look, I might not agree with you, but I'll fight to the death to defend your right to say what you think is right. And I think that's such an ideal that you kind of have to hold up to. It's like, it's one of the fundamental holes in democracy. And it's one of the fundamental, it's one of the fundamental spirits of democracy. Unless you can speak freely, your mind out, to the extent within the law, then you're not really taking part in the democratic process, isn't it? So yeah, that's just my take on it. As my man's just said, yeah, this is not a problem. I think me or someone else in the internet who it's like a digital nomad that you just visited like once on YouTube can solve. This just happens to be something that it's a process where people have to come in and make a decision. And once the majority has an idea on how they want to move forward, we move forward, into the next decade and then the next and the next until we walk away from the planet together. So yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and catch you beautiful bastards in the next one. Peace. Take care. Nice.